The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine, and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. We're coming to you from Salem, New Hampshire at Two Guys Smoke Shop. And the boys, what are you guys smoking today? An Alfonso?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have an Aladino.
Oh, Scott has an Aladino.
I can't afford the Alfonsos. That's for the attorney.
We're re-upping our doggy bar today. I'm so grateful to welcome back Jeremy Cohen from Boston Dog Lawyers. But first, we're going to start with Quirky Tip of the Day.
Hang on.
Good job with my pig handler. All right, so the quirky tip, you guys, is if you're having an issue with your dog, it may be a legal issue, you may not know if it's a legal issue, please contact Boston Dog Lawyers. The best way to reach them is send them an email through their website. Their website is going to be in the episode description. You can go click on that. They do free consults, and Jeremy is doing great things for dogs in New England, and a lot of dog lawyers are working all across the country right now. So we wanted to have him back on to kind of discuss more of this. Our first episode was awesome, and we're just going to hash out dogs and law today.
Here's the dog lawyer.
Jeremy, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. So tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you've been dealing with since we last saw you, some hot topics, just what your career's looking like these days.
Sure. When I was last here, about a year and a half ago, there were 2 of us in my office. Now we have 8.
Wow.
It's because of people like you that spread the word that people can have help through a lawyer, a concept that wasn't there a few years ago. And now I got involved in some legislative action, part of a committee trying to regulate boarding facilities in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I hate it. I don't like dealing with the state legislature. It's unbelievable, the roadblocks. We're just trying to get regulations in place because boarding facilities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire are not regulated, meaning these people don't have to be trained to run it. They may not have people there overnight. They may not keep dogs separated by size. And dogs are getting hurt or killed once every 11 days. At least that's how many when I get the calls. And we tried really hard to get Ollie's law passed. Ollie is a dog that was mauled at a doggy daycare on his first day. He died 40 days later, but they only had one person on staff, so they couldn't break up the fight, and they couldn't get the dog to the vet because the person couldn't leave.
Yeah.
And then they don't take accountability for it. And we're not looking to put any place out of business. We're just trying to make it safer for dogs. And unbelievably, the legislature, they killed the bill. We were in the Consumer Protection Committee, and we thought everything was going well, and then they sent the bill to study, and that's a graveyard. And they did it because there's so many other factions involved, lobbyists that we didn't know about, including the AKC, and they got to the head of that committee. We just refiled Ollie's Law, and it under Representative Brian Ash out of Massachusetts, he's a sponsor, and we filed it in this past January, and now I think we have a better chance. We have a lot of sponsors in the House and the Senate. It's Ollie's Law. They tried to take the name away from us last time, but it is Ollie's Law, and all we're trying to do is make things safer. It's unreal how many people can get in the way of that.
Yeah,
Can you give us a few points of the regulation that you're proposing?
Sure. It's simple.
Because I'm anti-regulation. Okay, but I'll let you know right now.
Scott's anti-rule.
I am. I understand why you're trying to get it into place, and I've seen people that think they're going to capitalize on the multi-million-dollar dog industry that know nothing about dogs and open a daycare. But what are the regulations that you're proposing?
Not a lot. Could you just have an emergency plan if there's going to be a fire? Could you keep somebody there overnight if your dog's going to be there overnight? Could you have a relationship with a nearby vet that in case something happens, you can get either somebody from the vet to come to you or you can immediately get this dog into the vet? Could you have the right size fence outside so the dog can't get under it or over it? Things that we all as pet owners think are already there.
Just assume it's going to happen, yeah.
I can tell you, Jess and I had a facility for several years, and we would have met all that criteria immediately. We had a bedroom there. And we had someone there every night. There were dogs there. Didn't have to, but we'd had that set up. And everything you're talking about,
just seems logical
it's like
to
common
us.
sense. It's just common sense stuff.
And that's what's so frustrating that we can't get it passed. So what I do is I've encouraged boarding facilities, call me, and I will help you voluntarily self-regulate in terms of just putting in these basic things. The other thing is air quality and how to keep flushing the air and make sure you have fresh air coming in for the dogs. We're not asking for, these are basic things. These are things that pet owners could regulate by going in there and saying, tell me these 7 things.
Yeah.
You know what I hate is a dog daycare where you don't get past the front desk and you don't see anything going on there. And to let my dog go behind a wall where I don't know what's going on, that's just out of the question.
Yeah.
I could not leave my dog in a place that I couldn't see what's going on, where do they stay. That's just basic. It's like a kid's daycare. I want to see what's going on. Who's watching my kid?
I got a call last night from somebody whose dog was killed yesterday morning.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It was a dog's first day there. And I said, let me guess. And obviously the boarding facility said, it wasn't our fault. Your dog was jumped off a wall or something. And I said, let me guess. Their cameras were off.
Yeah.
When that happened, yeah.
He said, how'd you know?
Every time.
He said, the cameras are never working
Yeah.
during any of these incidents. Just take accountability.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That doesn't seem like too much regulation to me.
Okay.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean, that's common sense stuff.
Yeah.
You know, what I get concerned about is when the regulation is gearing towards you having to get certified through a board or an organization that is promoting the regulation in the first place. Right. That, to me, I don't like.
Yeah, extra money and extra tape and everything else. So are you seeing a lot of like citizens as clients? Are you representing a lot of businesses? Is there a mix? Who's your clientele right now?
It's mostly pet owners, but we've started to branch out into businesses, small pet businesses in the industry. We consult for a company that's building private dog parks where people can come, they can have drinks, they can do work, they can have their dog there, they can eat. And they want to understand what are the risks, what type of injuries happen, what can I help them to prevent. And we do represent groomers, trainers, boarding facilities, occasionally a rescue, just because we know we have the same clientele. Although this is the coolest thing now, the second time doing it.
We're so happy to have you back.
One of the coolest things that's happened since I was here is the International Boarding and Pet Services Association. So they have a membership around the world, and they have trainers, groomers, and boarding facilities as their membership. They paid for me to come down and speak to their conference.
Oh, nice.
And that was just so cool to have somebody like
really acknowledge your great work. Yeah.
And we have the same clients. Those boarding facilities, those trainers, I'm servicing the same people.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways to make this safer for dogs. And that's one of our mission, that it's not necessarily about filing suit and being adversarial. It's just educating. And because I know both sides, we should share that information on how to prevent
and representing the dogs. I mean, the dogs deserve to be represented. You know, just getting this call, you sign a contract at a daycare. If your dog, has a fatal accident the first day, it just shouldn't go by the wayside. Like, dogs deserve some representation and they deserve a voice. And even referring to Ollie's Law, I'm glad you're keeping that name because it matters. Like, it matters that these dog stories are told and it doesn't continue happening. Yeah.
The one thing about the daycares that I've always, the waiver, I guess, that always bothered me is the dogs will be dogs. And what that means, they kill each other. They fuck, you know what I mean? It's like, it just covers everything when they say that. Dogs will be dogs. Things happen. Too bad. So sad. No. Be responsible. It's so wrong. And when I see that, well, there's an inherent risk. Dogs will be dogs. No, you have to make sure you're providing a safe environment, and you got to keep an eye on these dogs. Yeah. Certainly, some things happen and it's nobody's fault, but when it happens at your facility, you should at least be out front. And these businesses, they look at us as pet owners and say, we're gonna base our marketing on the love and the bond that these people have with their dog. And then when it comes time to be responsible or to pay for an injury, they don't want to do it. Yeah. So they recognize the bond when it's favorable for them, especially veterinarians and their insurance companies. But when it's time to pay up and be responsible, they just think, it's just a dog. You'll find another dog, and that's not fair. Yeah, you can't play it both ways. Yeah, and I'll tell you, this is not something that I'm excited to share with you, but we had a dog pass away when we had the dog. Something was going wrong with the dog. We immediately brought it to the emergency vet in Portsmouth. The dog died at the vet, and we immediately took it from there and paid to have a necropsy done on the dog. We're like, what the fuck happened to this dog? And we're like, oh, and I immediately called the owner from the vet, told her what was going on. The dog just dropped on us. And we'd only had the dog for like 2 days. And it wasn't like it was starved to death or something, you know? And we're waiting for the necropsy, and I'm like, I hope to God they come up with a reason, because if they don't know why, it still leaves a gray area.
Right.
And sure enough, the necropsy came back that the dog had a huge and large heart, and the vet told the owner the dog was a ticking time bomb. She had just got the dog like as an adult from some other rescue.
Yeah.
And it just happened, and unfortunately it happened with us. But we did everything in our and the lady, because we were so upfront about everything, and she realized when they told her it was a ticking time bomb, she got another dog, had us working with the other dog. We were going to her house to help her with a dog walker that was having trouble with the second dog. But it was a very emotionally upsetting thing for Jess, for me, for the owner. And we wanted to make everything right because we didn't believe we had done anything wrong. It just had happened. Yeah. And thank God, it's like, 20-something years of dog training. That's not something that happens more than once in your career. But with dog daycares, it's something that happens fairly often, I think.
I can see the impact you, and you didn't need to be told to do these steps.
Oh,
you
we
jumped right
they
in.
actually had us pick the dog up. We had to drive the dog to University of New Hampshire. Port City wasn't going to transport the dog. We paid $600. I mean, we were destroyed. I didn't eat for 3 days. It was terrible. But as Scott has said, we have since trained her other dogs. We're close with this woman. And yes, stuff happens and accidents happen, but you have to be upfront. Scott was on the phone that night, and it was one of the hardest calls he ever made, but he was on the phone that night. And hiding stuff is not helping anyone.
No. And that idea that you can still have a relationship with that pet owner, that's amazing. Because it doesn't have to be this adversarial, as soon as there's a dispute or a grievance or something bad happens, you turn your back. Yeah. You should be thinking, what would I want as a pet owner? And it's usually not money that the pet owner wants.
No.
They just want you to embrace them and say, I'm sorry this happened, let's figure it out together. Their money is not on their mind, number one. When they come to me, by that time, they've been ignored. Yeah. And now they want war. Yeah. And that's when they come to me and they want to shut businesses down and things. And we don't do that, but we just try to hold people accountable.
You get justice. You do what the law's built for.
Well, they have all that pain and they're channeling it towards something. Yeah. Towards the person that caused the pain in their mind, which was the daycare.
You know what stinks about that? Is they also channel it against me.
Yeah.
Because if things aren't moving fast enough, all those calls, people just they have so much anger. And they have to take it out on some professional, and other professionals turn their back. And I'm really thin-skinned, so I take it really personal, but I'm working through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to break super quick, and when we get back, we're going to talk more about dogs and the law.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
All right, one thing I want to talk about, and you had mentioned, there's been like an uptick of animal abuse. What is it? Abuse? What do we call it? What is the
negligence?
Neglect?
I'd say
Negligence?
is what it is.
Yeah.
Neglect.
Let's talk about this a little bit.
In Massachusetts, it's all under the same statute: animal neglect, animal cruelty.
Okay.
And what it is it's very subjective. To a lot of pet owners are being charged with a crime because their dog was too fat, too thin, was left in a car. Even if people see them yanking the chain during training them or something, it's so easy. Everybody's been deputized now to rat on people. And I never used to handle animal cruelty cases. I certainly won't handle a case where the dog has been abused and physically harmed. I mean, you can really sift those out quickly. Yeah. But I am starting to take cases because pet owners are being wrongfully charged with a crime. And in Massachusetts, it's a felony. That means you're looking at time, you're looking at a fine, and you're looking at the loss of your ability to be around dogs or work around dogs. Yeah. It's very, very serious.
And it's in the newspaper. It's like public information that you've abused an animal, which I can't think of anything worse for anybody, let alone a dog professional.
Which is why we limit it to the people who is a one-off. It's not people who physically abuse, but you are right. Once that's in the paper, forget it. Yeah. Because people just think that the police had probable cause or animal control had probable cause, and we are showing that they didn't. And amazingly, I think taking these cases without having a criminal background in law, we're making arguments that these courts have never heard before because I don't know any better. So we're not going about it the way it used to be done, and we're starting to see that DAs and judges are understanding our argument, and you can't be charging everybody with a felony and threatening to take their
animal.
At some point it's their livelihood because they're trainers or even at board. I represent somebody at a boarding facility. But what's most concerning is, especially for people coming from New Hampshire, and I've dealt with this, they don't know this new law about dogs in cars. And now people have been deputized to, if they see a dog in a car, they're trying to open the door to get the dog out. They're sounding the alarm that this dog is neglected. Mm-hmm. The police come down, they can break into the car and take the dog and leave you a note. And it may not even be too hot out. It may not even be too cold out. People just see this because the law changed a couple of years ago and got super strict, and now everybody's calling the police. So there's such an uptick in people being charged with animal cruelty, and it's not right. That should be a law that's designed for what we know animal cruelty to be. Yes. And this subtle stuff where a pet owner makes a decision about how to train the dog or even how they want to feed it or exercise it. I represented people that their dog was taken away and they were charged with neglect because the dog was too fat. And it certainly was a fat dog. It walked like a turtle. It was so fat. Yeah. But is that really a crime? Yeah. Instead, how about talking to them about changing the diet or something like that, but making them go to criminal court and stand up there and hear the charge against them, it's just not right. And so we are now representing that class of people. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
And this is a newer uptick, you're saying. Yeah. So what is your favorite part of your career? We've harped on a lot of negatives so far. So what's your favorite part of what you do?
I love arguing. I love arguing in court. I love being in court and just making the case why my client should have custody of the dog or why this dog isn't dangerous. But I think the favorite part is every day is different. Yeah. And now I made a list the other day of all the calls I've got about different pets. I just handled a snake case. Oh, cool. And a few years ago, I never would have taken a snake case. And it sounded impossible. There was a fire, Worcester. 4 people died. And when they were going to board up the house, they found 21 snakes that lived because they poured 1 million gallons of water on the fire, and the snakes lived because the water got in their tanks and kept them cool.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
But then the story they had to remove the snakes. It ended up 10 of them were poisonous and illegal. And the police had to form a caravan to drive the snakes out to where they were going to be sheltered. At any time, if they got loose, they were told to just drive off the road because it was too dangerous if these snakes got loose. But ultimately, my client wanted her 10 legal snakes back. She had every right to have them back. And we actually got them back, and they're bringing the snakes back. So these situations where people think it's hopeless, but they somehow found us, and taking the lessons we learned from representing dog owners, and it can apply to snakes. I mean, the calls about... There's a lot of fun calls about fish, and I got calls about the vet killed my hamster, and I want to sue them, and just things like that. They make the day go by. I mean, the people are taking it serious. Sometimes I'm like, I always wonder, is this a friend playing a joke? Yeah, yeah. But people and their pets.
I got to start making some prank calls.
Oh, God, yeah, in all your spare time. Well, and that's interesting when you talk about, you like to make these arguments because a lot of the arguments you're making are novel. Like, this is a newer field that is kind of up and coming, and you're kind of heading it in a certain way. I mean, you're really kind of a forefront of that. And I think you said, like 35 states now have similar setup?
They have at least somebody that I know I can refer to. They might not do it full time. But the other exciting thing is, and I may have brought this up before, is I really hated being a lawyer before I did this. I was so bored. Yeah. I didn't like being in law school when I was a lawyer. And suddenly, we're making arguments at the appeals court in Massachusetts, like super high, next to the highest court in the state, about why pets shouldn't be considered property and why couples should be able to, even though they hate each other, still share the pet. And we're being challenged by other lawyers, and we're bringing this to the highest court that we can to try to change the law. It takes baby steps. There's a lot of curmudgeonly judges who don't want to see this change. But just bringing it there, just bringing that fight, we're going to get there. We're going to change the law. It may not happen. Hopefully it happens during my career, but
well,
that's fun too.
I'm opposed to.
Here we go. Another opposition from
I
Scott.
am. I'm opposed to a dog being something other than property, because that means that other people can come in and evaluate my house and decide your dog doesn't have a big enough room. He should have a 12-foot by 12-foot bedroom, personally, because things can get a little crazy. And I would rather see the other side of it, where people are prosecuted for abuse than having to live within these regulations and having my dog be like a child. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And if I misspoke, pets are property. They're not more. They should
Well,
never
you said
be.
the bill was to make them something other than property.
Well, a special type of property where they don't have standing to go to court. But judges right now are saying a dog is like a table, and you cannot share a table. You can't cut the table in half. That's not true. You can share a dog, and they're unwilling at the highest court right now to say that you can. We're not saying pets have rights. We are a pet owners' rights law firm.
Okay.
Not. There's plenty of people who are advocating for pets' rights. I never wanted to do that because there's people still who don't have rights that are recognized.
Let's
it's not about
put
pets'
our
rights.
ducks in a row. Yeah.
It's about recognizing that pet owners in this instance, should be able to share the dog. It's not a kitchen table. It's a dog with a finite lifestyle that can go back and forth between houses. And so that's sort of the angle. Judges, they have to modernize a little bit, at least to see how we treat
And the
them.
comparison to the table is a great one. And really, if you look at society nowadays, a lot of people are getting the dog before they have the kid, or they choose not to have children, and the dog kind of becomes the child. So it makes perfect sense that if you've been in a relationship for 5 or 6 years and you guys have had this dog the whole time, you would want split custody. You know what I mean? And it may be for the dog's greater good. Scott and I see this quite frequently, that one member of the couple is a little bit healthier for the dog than the other. It may be for the dog's greater good to go on the weekends here or there, and I totally get that. And it helps people kind of work through this minutia, because the way that people are seeing dogs is more similar to children at this point. It's not a kitchen table, like you say.
Right. Two things about that. I am not changing my opinions up here just because.
No, I'm just giving my.
Just because you got me a great cigar. So, we can certainly disagree on things, but if they're just a piece of property, when your dog is harmed at the vet, at the groomer, at the trainer, you're only getting replacement value. And so the law right now does not look at the intrinsic value, the value of that dog to your family.
Mm-hmm.
They won't give emotional distress damages to pet owners.
You get a new puppy. You get a $300 puppy. I understand that.
And so we're just trying to break through, not so more money is flowing, but that's how you affect behavior. People will treat the dogs better. They'll improve their procedures wherever you have your dog, because they're got to be concerned about the wallet.
A service dog is a perfect example. That could be a dog with $15,000 worth of training in it. And if that dog now is harmed by a vet, it's not just a puppy replacement. There's a service dog that needs to be replaced. But on an unrelated note, latest thing I just read, which I thought was interesting, that may or may not have to do with the law, but about taxes, where there was a guy that had a house in Miami and a house in like New Hampshire, for example. Mm-hmm. And he was writing off, he said, my residence is in Miami. And they were for tax purposes. And they were arguing, oh, no, you have your house. And what determined whether or not it was a house, his home, was did he bring his dog with him? When he brought his dog with him, that's where he friggin' lives.
That's when it became his home, yeah.
And then they said, okay, we'll give you the write-off because you brought your dog with you. And that's what determined that's his home, because his home is where his dog is.
That's great.
Isn't that
That's
neat?
a step. That's a step in the
neat.
right direction. These baby steps. Service dogs. We just settled a case, $60,000, because our client's service dog was attacked by a few bulldogs, could never be a service dog again. And for her needs, that's, like you said, that's the cost of training, properly training a service dog for these particular needs she had. So
it's a huge expense and time, and the relationship with the dog, there's a lot going on there.
the law does recognize that those dogs are a special type of property, service dogs. So at least they do recognize it there.
It could be kind of like with a classic car. If you have a 67 Camaro, but you have not had it appraised, it's just an old car if it gets crashed. But if it's been appraised, now you can say, hey, that car was worth $40,000. It's not just an old Camaro. that was, you know what I mean? So now the insurance has to pay you for the appraised value.
And there's experts out there that will share the appraised value with us.
Yeah.
And so that's another field that's opening up
and
too.
coming. Well, and I just love this emotional, component of it, because like Scott and I, our dogs are a world. Like that is, it's not, if something happened to one of our dogs, like we'd be beyond devastated, and especially if it was an accident or something. And it is important to take into account what it does to a human and a family, because these dogs are more than just, something that you take for a walk and they sleep under the kitchen table now. They really are becoming truly family members.
When you take 50 calls, actually, we're getting about 90 to 100 calls a month now, and there's tears and emotion in every one of those calls. You have to advocate for some type of change.
True.
It's just so sad, and it's so. What's even sadder is the unfairness of how pet owners, the responses they get. So we're not. Well, I guess we are troublemakers. We are troublemakers.
You're rabble rousers.
For the right people, though.
Yeah, we need some rabble rousing out there in the dog field for sure. So we have people that listen from and watch all over the country. So if they are curious about a legal matter or something, if they contact you and they don't live in Massachusetts, you may be able to refer them out, or that's still okay. It doesn't just have to be Massachusetts residents that reach out.
I don't. If you've reached out to me, I will find you. I won't just say we don't do that. I will find you somebody. And what's a real exciting step since the last time we were here is we now have pretty much, we're opening Boston Dog Lawyers of San Diego.
Oh, cool. Sweet.
And,
both coasts, babies. Yeah. Both coasts.
2 liberal states.
Well, if we can get the coasts, we can build towards the middle. And that's never been really a goal. The goal is that pet owners in any state could have access to some type of a pet lawyer, or at least know that someone exists. But
they need someone to speak on their behalf. And I so appreciate what you're doing, because you're right. We've seen it a lot. We're dog professionals in the industry. We've been in the industry for a while. And a lot of people don't really give a rat's ass. They just, they call, this bad thing happened. And we're like, that's terrible. Like, you have to address it. Like, you have to do something about it. And these owners are trusting you with their pride and their joy. They're dropping them off every morning. They're dropping them off for grooming. They're trusting that you're giving sound medical advice or sound medical treatment to these dogs. And when that goes awry, it should be public. It should be addressed, and change does need to happen. I think it's great.
So true.
One thing that we've run into fairly often is someone that has an emotional support dog that now has moved into a condo association where they say no dogs. You can't have a dog. Well, with an emotional support dog, you can have that dog in that, but it may require that you get a professional like you to come in and say, listen, because as soon as an attorney gets involved, people start backing down.
Yeah. Do you have any of those?
If they can just say, hey, you can't be here with your dog, a lot of people just go away.
Yeah.
So I have tons of those cases, and we charge a relatively small flat fee, because I know, as you said, once we get involved, as long as you can give me the right paperwork, we win.
Yeah.
And these landlords and these homeowners associations, these condo associations, they only learn about the law when they break it. But even when they know they're not right, they'll push you. And one of the things
hoping you'll go away, yeah.
Yep. One of the things they have is, well, if we incur legal fees, you have to pay it. In some of these condo docs, that's unfair. We vet every case to make sure these people weren't just denied a dog and then decided to poof, I have a emotional support animal. But one case we had was that we took last year, emotional support chickens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
how'd that one fare?
Well,
it might be harder with a rooster, but
yeah. So the part of the agreement was we'll get rid of the roosters, because that annoys people. But well, we're a year and a half later, and my little 7-year-old client still has her chickens.
There you go.
So,
I love it.
It's been the fact that we just brought the fight. It's not fully determined yet, but still, a year and a half later, she's got her chickens, and we've proven how important these are to her. But the judge ultimately said, "Why not a cat?" And I said, Your Honor, that is the wrong question to be asking. And so right off the bat, we started to have a fight, because she was like, "Don't question me." But it's not about what animal; it's what impact.
Yes, it's true.
And so.
And animals, I mean, just so you guys understand where Scott and I are coming from when we get up here on a weekly basis, animals of many species can greatly impact people's lives, children's lives, people with, emotionally troubling lives. We fully believe in that.
But I will say none as much as a dog.
Especially if it's Scott's dog.
I want to say also just about my dog and the way we take care of our dogs. We are with my dog doing this proactive vet care now, because the brother of my dog had got cancer at 9. And so what did we just do?
Just an ultrasound.
We do an
to
ultrasound,
search.
all this stuff, which costs like $700 to just see that nothing is growing. Because by the time you find out the dog has it, it's too late. So we're just like keeping an eye, and it's like, I don't know, not many people
love
do
that.
proactive vet care, but we want to make sure that if anything pops up, we can do the best we can to keep him going as long as possible.
I really like that, like a full body scan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do all,
That's
checked his
great.
heart, checked everything, and then he comes back, everything's fine, and I always say, well, obviously, but
The peace of mind you
Yeah.
have, and I'm sure pet insurance won't pay for that.
No,
but
no.
Who cares?
No, yeah, we
You've
don't.
got-
Yeah, we're trying to give the best we possibly can to our animals.
I have
and
not heard that.
Yeah.
That's great. I am in the right place among the right people. That's
we're the
pretty
crazy
cool.
dog people. Anything else we've missed, Jeremy, about your business or your career or anything else that you want to mention?
One tip I always try to give, this is not necessarily about me, but regarding all the tools that are out there for dogs, I just think the worst thing when I see people using a retractable leash.
Oh,
I think it's
I
the
like that.
worst thing you can use because it's not safe for the dog. Reason is,
or the human.
or the human.
Yeah.
The reason is, but if there's a threat coming, a coyote, another dog, you don't have time to bring your dog in and to reel it in and get it close to you and to get out of that situation. And more coyotes are out there going after small dogs. And people with small dogs love the retractable leash. Look at me. Look at the
freedom
liberty
he
and the
has,
freedom.
yeah.
But you're not doing your dog a favor because that's where I see a lot of problems happening.
Yeah, I love that. All right, even the dog lawyer is anti-retractable, you guys, and you're not going to bring a lawsuit against the coyote that kills the like. There's not a whole lot we can do at that point. Thank you again, Jeremy, for coming on. We'll probably have Jeremy back. He always has so much to impart with his knowledge and his cases, and we always love the discussion. Again, if you guys need any legal services, whether you're in Massachusetts or not, please check out Boston Dog Lawyers. The description will be in today's episode link. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Thanks, guys.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.